Welcome to the Mojo Mundi podcast, where it's all about magic, manifesting, and movement. I'm Ginny Watts, the Dancing Witch, and this episode is titled More Than Words, Part 2. Wednesday, November 5. I have just dropped episode 22, More Than Words, Part 1. I am thinking about loving all of me. Just now, when I think about all of myself, I can recognize that never includes my soul self, my capital S self. I picture and connect only with the part of me that is manifested in this time and space. As I think about loving myself, I tend to connect with the parts of myself that I don't like. I think that must be true for a lot of people. Consistently, whether I was speaking with friends or family members or clients in my psychotherapy practice, people always balked at seeing their whole selves as lovable. Our flaws eagerly make their way to the forefront, or perhaps it is more accurate to say that we reach out and immediately drag them front and center. I picture a family portrait of sorts, with the surly, the disheveled, the shifty, the frightened parts of myself all standing awkwardly and resentfully in the foreground, fully aware that the rest of the gang, the good kids, are standing behind, shaking their heads and tut-tutting. From this point of view, my compassion awakens. I know these parts of myself well. I have rehearsed their lives over and over in my head, steeped in shame and regret. In the last few years, I have taken time to understand their genesis and what wakes them up in the moment. I can genuinely feel love for them now, perhaps because they are from the past. Will I be able to do that for some new untouchable? I choose to step back from the ledge of what if. The important message here is that compassion is a necessary paradigm segue to self-love. I know this about compassion. Somehow, in the midst of facing not loving myself, it has a new ring to it, a new depth and intensity. It feels nice to recognize that I can pour compassion, the emotional miracle grow, into the mix and trust that I am expanding toward a new relationship with myself. I guess the new vibration of this awareness lies in my confidence in the process. It appears that I have touched on this painful lack of self-love before with little hope and no conviction. How could I have been surprised that I didn't love me? By denying the awareness, of course, by pushing it back down into the dark and murky depths, by hiding it from others rather than confiding in those who love me. I have deftly hidden it from myself. No more. I am walking down the path with new information, with new sensations. I am simultaneously more aware, more present within and without. Being aware that I can be loving toward my past selves, that I can even embrace my past points of failure, the past manifestations of my weakest links, gives birth to a new awareness. Loving myself is about being in mindful relation with myself. Here is one of those invitations that weakness and failure extend to me. I can love myself in my past failures, in my past moments of weakness. What I struggle with is loving myself in the now of failure and weakness. In these moments, I step out of relationship, which is an avoidance of contrast, a subtle, often unconscious attempt to control the reality by separating myself from myself. That is an uncomfortable truth, one that makes me chuckle and shake my head while feeling pained all at the same time. I can recognize the connection to the other. Of course, judgment is part and parcel of the archetype of the other. My pain arises from seeing myself through the eyes of the other. Both are true. I don't want to be me in a moment of failure or weakness, and it is a powerfully habitual choice to jump into the perspective of the other, particularly in times of failure and weakness. In fact, defining myself in terms of failure and weakness is inextricably entwined with the other. Loving myself is being in immediate and constant relationship with myself, embracing myself as I am in the truth of each moment. Here is a great payoff for fostering self-love. Loving myself is a powerful antidote for my obsession with the other. My focus on the other is a massive roadblock on my path to self-love. It is so massive because it has been my constant companion for as far back as I can remember. Literally, my earliest memory is about the other. If I am to succeed in genuinely loving my whole self, I must release my grip on the other, for truly that is the case. This archetype is of my own making, a familiar who was the best help I could find as a 3-year-old. To release the other so that I may step back to presence and relationship with myself. I now come to terms with the reality that letting something pass out of my psyche will leave a void. Without something of equal or greater power to fill the void, the other will easily slide back into its comfortable spot. What could be more powerful than being present, than being in relationship with myself? Because, of course, if I am present and open to myself, I am present and open to deity within. Oh, I can feel the relief as I sink into the truth of these words, which helps me recognize the distress and fear I have been unaware of feeling in the face of change. This is a good time to share a testament to the reality of the unrecognized pain. As I have been writing this second segment of More Than Words, I have been adding the word, quote, ourselves, unquote, in addition to the word myself. For example, loving myself, loving ourselves, or embracing myself, embracing ourselves. I was adding in the ourselves because I began to worry that the last episode and this one were too full of me. Not from a writer's standpoint, but from a what are listeners seeing in me that's too much standpoint. I can feel compassion for wanting to control others' views of me when I am feeling vulnerable. I understand it is hard for me to be raw and unbuttoned. Deep breaths accompany a reminder that this is a moment to practice letting go of the other. I have just gone back and taken out the ourselves. Compassion is also a strong antidote to fear. Friday, November 7. Today, I have been reminded that sharing struggles with others is not just a counteragent to self-deception. When I choose to be vulnerable with others, I open the door to receiving wisdom from those whom I respect, trust, love, and who love me. At the end of Soul Free Dance today, someone asked what was happening in my life, and I explained that I was going through a bit of a quest. With genuine interest, she and the other women present asked for more information. I briefly described my journey toward self-love and where I was at the moment. Their supportive curiosity prompted me to talk in more detail, and in turn, these women responded with experiences, questions, and discoveries of their own. Their words awoke 2 clarifying awarenesses in me. Someone brought up the complicated views about self-love, that it can be narcissistic or grandiose. I let this percolate, and I have received a powerful insight about this complication. When I worked with clients on self-love, most of them expressed the fear that loving oneself was synonymous with narcissism, arrogance, conceit, and hubris, or at least that they personally would fall into one of these sins if they attempted to move into self-love. At that time, I usually pointed out that the fact they feared those possibilities argued for the unlikelihood that they would fall into these terrible behaviors. That was a cognitive behavioral response to their fears. I never really took time to explore the spiritual reality until today. Self-love is about love, the energy of creativity, the energy of the divine, of creator. Narcissism, arrogance, conceit, hubris all grow out of fear and shame. Individuals who demonstrate these damaging behaviors are acting from deep-seated fears, steeped in shame and, ironically, self-loathing. The way to hold these feelings at bay is to try to control the perceptions of the other by demanding, forcing others to worship, and shouting down any chance of real or perceived judgment from the other. Self-love invites and supports self-examination, self-awareness, introspection, and accurate appraisal of my strengths and my weaknesses. Self-love is the ideal ground to grow unflinching honesty. True love is not blind. It is powerfully perceptive and compassionate all at once. Love embraces rather than rejects, includes rather than divides. Love empowers speaking the truth even when it might be painful or dangerous or rejected by others. My journey towards self-love is not leading to avoidance of seeing and acknowledging my failures and weaknesses. Rather, it is a path of exploring failures and weakness with compassion and clarity, which can only result in a life of ever-expanding awareness, honesty, evolution, and connection with deity. That's what love is, what love does, and what love creates. As I said at the beginning of the episode, I am also being invited to love my capital S self. As we visited at the end of Soul Free Dance, I shared this new experience of loving my sacred self. Another dancer said that she hadn't thought about loving her higher self, her soul self. She interacted with her capital S self more from the standpoint of asking for help or guidance. She connected with her soul self in a context of asking and hadn't thought about loving the sacred expanse of who she is. It was valuable to be reminded that we walk unique and personal living paths, that our challenges, our skills, our strengths, our perceptions can be so similar and so very different. For me, I am realizing I partition out my soul self from my frailties, while my friend has discovered that she might widen her perspective of her relationship into loving her higher self. Sunday, November 9. This expedition began with the discovery that I did not love myself, something that had lain in the depths, you might call it the shadow, outside my awareness. Once I allowed this truth, I opened to such amazing growth. I discovered that loving my past experiences and my current quirks was not the same as loving me. I recognized that I did not love my failures and weaknesses and found that sharing the truth of not loving myself shone a clear light on what was standing in my way. My focus on the other bars the way to self-love. I unearthed the wisdom that if I give up clinging to the other, I experience compassion as a paradigm segue to self-love. I embraced the truth that self-love is moment-to-moment practice in every moment, being present in love to all of myself, the powerful and the weak, the successful and the failing, the physical and the eternal. I received the gift of understanding that loving myself brings me into direct connection with deity within. In this moment, I can say, I love me, and I can feel the truth of loving myself. I wonder what invitations will arise the next time I come face to face with failing, the next time a new truth bubbles up from the depths, the next time I am brought low by a weak and fragile part of me. Again, I feel surprisingly excited and curious for the opportunity to test my burgeoning self-love. Wednesday, November 12. Postscript. Over the past several days, I have sunk into the discoveries, the gifts, and the wisdom that have flooded me as I have navigated the path toward loving myself. Including my capital S self in the mix has allowed me to feel that I can say I love myself and experience my body's assertion that that is true. I have experimented with separating out my physical manifested self from my capital S self and find it more difficult to connect with loving myself, but not as if loving myself was untrue. Today, I was afforded a more important measure of where I am on the self-love path. This morning, I faced a situation where a decision had been made for me without my knowledge. The intention of those involved was understandable, though not appropriate from my perspective. I became so angry. I was distracted by imagined conversations with the people involved, in which I gave them what for with many clever, salty remarks. As I prepared to address and undo the decision in question, I felt angry tears burning my eyes. My heart was pounding, my stomach clenched, my jaw locked. A parallel path of developing equanimity and practicing temperance allowed me to recognize my tumble down the steep slope of indignation. I asked myself, what is up here? Why was I so angry? What left me in such a chaotic state? Here, my path of practicing equanimity and temperance converged with my path of discovering self-love. My first clue was identifying my feeling as indignation. As Google Dictionary explains, indignation is, quote, anger or annoyance provoked by what is perceived as unfair treatment. The key words for me are provoked and perceived. I was telling myself that these individuals had overstepped their bounds in service to themselves and out of disrespect or criticism of me. I counseled deep breaths and recognized that today's circumstances had snagged on hooks from my past. These hooks, what Tibetan Buddhism refers to as Shempa, caught on an immediate event and sunk in past complex experiences, significantly altered my perceptions of my situation and my accompanying feelings and thoughts. This is an old experience for me. It is a weakness born of my humanity and my history. I looked at my past and compassionately validated my deep, painful, and fearful responses. Once I could feel some release in my belly and in my heart, I re-examined my current situation. I reread all the messages, voicemails, emails, and texts, and recognized that there are a number of possible ways this all could have gone down. I generated a multitude of possible motivations for the actions these individuals took. None were deeply nefarious. Most were even an attempt to do something helpful, and at worst, they were understandably self-serving and undoubtedly lacking accurate or substantial thoughts about my position. I was still feeling some irritation, some softened fear as anger. In that moment, I stopped and said, I love myself just as I am right now. I love myself as I jump to conclusions. I love myself as I lash out from wounded pride. I love myself as I want to punish those I perceive as hurting me, even though they weren't intending to. And there it was. Today, November 12, 2025, I genuinely felt deep, perceptive, kind love for myself in the midst of my weakness. I felt the shift from weakness to vulnerability with myself. And in that shift lay a final gift. Remember that vulnerability is an embracing of our weaknesses and our failures. Through being vulnerable with others, we release shame and instead invite opportunities for greater intimacy, more trust, and expansion. When we are vulnerable with ourselves, the same applies. I can feel that doors are opening within me to allow all the hidden hooks to arise from the depths, to be acknowledged, to be met with compassion, and to be released. This is a lifelong, perhaps lives-long experience, and it feels good to have the doors open. Thanks for listening.
Our music is used by permission of the artist, Sean Phoenix. Thank you, Sean. And thank you to Bozeman Public Library for the Workbench Sound Studio located in beautiful downtown Bozeman, Montana. If you would like to learn more about allowing and how to find your unique style of manifesting, please visit my website, caravanofdreamsmt.com, or email me at dancingwitchmt@gmail.com. This is Ginny Watts, the Dancing Witch. Till next time, blessed be.